Hello, once again, and welcome to A River Between Chaos and Zen, the poetry podcast from Creative Actors Lab. My name is Max, and as always, Kelly says hello and sends her love. I wanted to continue, actually, carrying on from the last podcast, just speaking about poetry and mental health. And I want to try to do some justice to Emily Dickinson, who, there's so much that can be said about her and I don't even know where to begin. If you go onto Wikipedia and you start looking at Emily Dickinson, part of the bugaboo that comes about here is that she apparently had a very gregarious youth. Her family, she came from a very powerful family. They founded Amherst College. I can go on and on. But here's the thing. If you go into Wikipedia and you start researching Emily Dickinson, it's voluminous. It is huge amount of information about Emily Dickinson. And then at the very end of the thing, Wikipedia puts in a comment going, hold on, you got a whole lot of unverified statements here, and this may not be accurate. And they're kind of saying that basically, okay, y'all don't know. And the thing about Emily Dickinson is, supposedly she did have a very gregarious youth, and then went to seminary, and for whatever reason, when she got out of seminary, she became more and more reclusive as her life went on. And so consequently, and that just continued to be so, apparently until she passed away, did not leave her family's property. And she wrote something like over 1,800 poems. In her lifetime, only 8 or 10 of them supposedly were actually printed, and they were usually under anonymous and usually without her permission or consent or even her knowledge, and that's just shitty. But apparently when she passed away, she told her sister to destroy all of her letters, which apparently the sister did. And then, but her poems survived. And there's, a few things that I do feel like I can comment upon, particularly when it comes to the subject of mental health and of writing poetry. In that she had many very close people to her pass away over the course of her life and from a very young age. And she, in her poetry, she just became very obsessed with death, and she became very reclusive. And the thing I can say about that is that just for myself personally, there have been times in my life where just life has been really, really tough. And me being the person that I am, and going through my own tribulations with mental health, the whole idea of not going anywhere, the whole idea of staying in the house as much as possible sounded really, really good. And actually, when COVID struck and we got into the really hardcore lockdown phase, I will say there was nothing. I was fine at the time, but just the whole idea of not going out anywhere and not seeing anyone outside of my family, and just kind of just getting hunkered down and sequestered away, honestly, to me personally, was very, very comforting, because there have been times I found the outside world to be somewhat crueler than necessary. A lot of her poetry and a lot of her writing, she did address Jesus Christ as if she was addressing him directly. And, again, for myself, if you've followed any of this at all, I've spoken about some of the hellacious times of my youth, and there came a point at the end of my teenage years, getting into my very early 20s, that I basically said, and I stopped doing the hard drugs and all of that, and I really seriously considered going into seminary and just studying theology, and the idea of that, it just was very, very attractive to me at the time. It's nothing I wound up doing, but it just seemed, just the whole idea of never leaving home, or just staying and just studying the good acts and the good words and the good lessons was a very, very attractive thing to me at the time. So when I started to read about Emily Dickinson, I'm like, I can see that. One thing I wanted to say also is when you stop to look at the amount of influence this woman has had just in her writings and the movies about her and the stuff that has been inspired by her. I mean, even Taylor Swift talks about being inspired by Emily Dickinson, that she has poems, or excuse me, she has lyrics inspired by the poems of Emily Dickinson. Taylor Swift apparently is a very distant relative of Emily Dickinson, which I did not know. And for the record, if I may digress for a moment, I may be a 63-year-old working class white guy. Between you and me, I actually kind of like Taylor Swift, but I digress. When you look at the amount of influence and inspiration this woman has had, particularly when somebody who through decades of their life, they didn't want to leave the house, they didn't want to leave the grounds, but if you look at how far-reaching her writings and her poetry were, it's just remarkable. It's astounding. It's on a level, in my opinion, of someone like Shakespeare, of just the influence and the inspiration and the longevity of these poems they were written in the 1800s. She lived 1830 to 1866, and when you stop to consider that she, just from her own little corner of the world, writing in her own notebooks, how the longevity and the distance that these poems have traveled and been read by people, more than just young women. It just bespeaks to me just the magic and the wonder of poetry, and the reach that it can have. And from somebody who really got to a point of really not wanting to go out to the outside world at all, it's just amazing to me. As always, I will be doing a pretty cold reading of a lot of these poems. Let me try to do some let me try to do some respect to Miss Dickinson. This is called Because I Could Not Stop for Death. Because I could not stop for death, he kindly stopped for me. The carriage held but just ourselves and immortality. We slowly drove, he knew no haste, and I had put away my labor and my leisure too for his civility. We passed the school where children strove at recess in the ring. We passed the fields of grazing grain. We passed the setting sun. Or rather, he passed us. The dews drew quivering and chill, for only gossamer, my gown, my tippet, only twill. We paused before a house that seemed a swelling of the ground. The roof was scarcely visible, the cornice in the ground. Since then, 'tis centuries, and yet feels shorter than the day I first surmised the horses' heads were towards eternity. This is, I heard a fly buzz when I died. I heard a fly buzz when I died. The stillness in the room was like the stillness in the air between the heavens of storm. The eyes around had wrung them dry, and breaths were gathering firm from the last onset when the king be witnessed in the room. I willed my keepsake signed away what portion of me be assignable. And then it was, there interposed a fly, with blue, uncertain stumbling buzz between the light and me, and when the windows failed, and then I could not see to see. A narrow fellow in the greens. A narrow fellow in the grass. A narrow fellow in the grass occasionally rides. You may have met him, did you not? His notice sudden is. The grass divides as with a comb a spotted shaft is seen, and then it closes at your feet and opens further on. He likes a boggy acre, a floor to cool for corn, yet when a boy and barefoot, I more than once at noon have passed, I thought, a whiplash, unbraiding in the sun, when stooping to secure it, it wrinkled and was gone. Several of nature's people I know, and they know me. I felt them a transport of cordiality, but never met this fellow attended or alone without a tighter breathing and zero at the bone. There's a certain slant of light. There's a certain slant of light, winter afternoons, that oppresses like the heft of cathedral tunes. Heavenly hurt it gives us. We can find no scar, but internal difference where the meanings are. None may teach it, any. 'Tis with sealed despair, an imperial affliction sent us of the air. When it comes, the landscape listens, shadows hold their breath. When it goes, 'tis like the distance on the look of death. A bird came down the walk. A bird came down the walk he did not know I saw. He bit an angleworm in halves and ate the fellow raw. And then he drank the dew from a convenient grass, and then hopped sideways to a wall to let a beetle pass. He glanced with rapid eyes that hurried all around. They looked like frightened beads, I thought, and stirred his velvet head. Like one in danger, cautious, I offered him a crumb, and he unrolled his feathers and rowed him softer home. Then oars divided the ocean, to silver for a seam, or butterflies off banks of noon leap plashless as they swim. The soul selects her own society. The soul selects her own society, then shuts the door to divide majority, present no more. Unmoved, she notes the chariots pausing at her low gate, unmoved the emperor be kneeling upon her mat. I've known her from an ample nation choose one, then close the valves of her attention like stone. I like to see it lap in the miles. I like to see it lap in the miles and lick the valleys up and stop to feed itself at tanks and then prodigious step around a pile of mountains and supercilious pier and shanties by the sides of roads and then a quarry pair to fit its ribs and crawl between, complaining all the while in horrid hooting stanza that chase itself downhill, and neigh like Boganares, then punctual as a star, stop, docile and omnipotent, at its own stable door. Pardon me if I butchered the word Boganares. My life closed twice before its close. My life closed twice before its close. It yet remains to see if immortality unveil a third event to me, so huge, so hopeless to conceive as these that twice befell. Parting is all we know of heaven and all we need of hell. Success is counted sweetest. Success is counted sweetest by those who ne'er succeed. To comprehend a nectar requires sorest need. Not one of all the purple host who took the flag today can tell the definition of so clear a victory as he defeated, dying on whose forbidden ear the distant strains of triumph burst agonized and clear. I taste a liquor never brewed. I taste a liquor never brewed from tankards scooped in pearl. Not all the vats upon the Rhine yield such an alcohol. Inebriate of air I am, in debauchee of dew, reeling through endless summer days from inns of molten blue. When landlords turn the drunken bee out the foxglove's door, when butterflies renounce their drams, but I shall drink the more, till seraphs swing their snowy hats and saints to windows run to see the little tippler leaning against the sun. After great pain a formal feeling comes. After great pain a formal feeling comes. The nerves sit ceremonious like tombs. The stiff heart questions, was it he that bore in yesterday or centuries before? The feet mechanical go round of ground or air or aught. A wooden way regardless grown, a quartz contentment like a stone. This is the hour of lead, remembered if outlived, as freezing persons recollect the snow, first chill, then stupor, then the letting go. I felt a funeral in my brain. I felt a funeral in my brain, and mourners to and fro kept treading, treading, till it seemed the sense was breaking through. And when they all were seated, a service like a drum kept beating, beating, till I thought my mind was going numb. And then I heard them lift a box and creak across my soul, when those same boots of lead again the space began to toll. As all the heavens were a bell, and being but an ear, and I, and silence, some strange race, wrecked solitary here. And then a plank in reason broke, and I dropped down, and hit a world at every plunge, and finished knowing then. And two more. I never saw a moor. I never saw a moor, I never saw the sea, yet I know. Excuse me, let me take that back. I never saw a moor, I never saw the sea, yet know I how the heather looks, and what a billow be. I never spoke with God, nor visited in heaven, yet certain am I of the spot, as if the cheeks were given. And lastly, much madness is divinest sense. Much madness is divinest sense to a discerning eye. Much sense the starkest madness. 'Tis the majority in this, as all prevails, assent, and you are sane. Demure, you're straightway dangerous, and handled with a chain. Miss Dickinson, thank you. I think I know Emily Dickinson, and I know that tends to be like very, young woman's sort of poetry, but or at least that's how it's marketed, or that's how it's perceived, or whatever. But to me, that just speaks. That just speaks quite clearly and eloquently, and it sounds basically like that as a person who you would probably never get close to. But that's how she gave herself to the world. And I love that. As always, thank you for listening. May the long-time sun shine upon you, all love surround you, and the pure light within you guide your way on.